Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about something every single one of us has felt, being out of breath. And it turns out it's way more than just an inconvenience. It's actually one of your body's most important alarm bells.
I mean, whether you're hitting the gym hard or just climbing a flight of stairs, that feeling, that struggle for air, it's something we all know. But what is really going on inside our bodies when that happens? Well, it's a pretty amazing four-part story, and it all comes down to one absolutely critical biological idea.
And that idea, the real hero of our story today, is something called homeostasis. Just think of it like your body's own internal thermostat, its personal assistant, its security guard, all rolled into one. It's this constant, tireless effort to keep everything, we're talking temperature, acidity, you name it, in perfect, stable balance. Why? So your cells can actually do their jobs and, keep you alive.
So what's the number one tool your body uses to keep this balance? It's breathing, respiration. On the surface, it seems so simple, right? Get the good stuff in, that's oxygen, and get the bad stuff out, that's carbon dioxide. But that simple little exchange, it's literally the foundation of our entire existence.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at why this whole balancing act is so darn important. Then, we're going to walk through the 4 key processes that make it all happen. And finally, we'll tie it all together to figure out what that breathless feeling is really trying to tell you.
All right, first up, the balancing act. The really crucial thing to get here is that this isn't just about sucking in oxygen. Nope, it's about maintaining this incredibly delicate equilibrium. If you have too much or too little of either oxygen or carbon dioxide, your whole system can get thrown into complete chaos. And when that balance is totally lost, a couple of really dangerous things can happen. On one side, you've got what's called tissue hypoxia. Basically, your cells are just starving for oxygen. They start producing acid, and eventually they just die. Then on the other side, you have hypercarbia. That's when carbon dioxide builds up and makes your blood dangerously acidic. Both of these are total emergencies, and your body will do pretty much anything to stop them from happening.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Process number 1. This is the part we all think of when we say breathing. It's called pulmonary ventilation, and it's simply the mechanical act of moving air in and out of your lungs. So, think of this whole process like a factory. This first step is the receiving dock. And who's in charge? A little control center in your brainstem called the medulla oblongata. It sends signals down through your nerves to the workers, muscles like your diaphragm, telling them exactly when to contract and when to relax to pull that air in. Now, what's so fascinating is just how many different ways this receiving dock can shut down. It's not just one thing. Look at these examples. A head injury, like Diane's, that messes with the factory's main control center. A nerve condition, like Jane has, that's like cutting the communication lines to the workers, the muscles. Smoke inhalation for Phil, or fibrotic lungs for John, that's like the loading dock doors being swollen shut or too stiff to even open. And then you have an injury like Peter's, which can literally break the factory wall.
Let's stick with Peter's case for just a second, because it's a great example. He's got a pneumothorax. That means air has gotten into the space around the lung, and it's causing it to collapse. But as you can see here, the exact same thing can happen with blood, and that's called a hemothorax. The cause is different, but the result is the same. The lung gets squeezed and just can't expand to take in any air.
Okay, so let's say the air makes it past the receiving dock and is successfully inside the lungs. Great. But now comes the next critical step, getting the oxygen out of that air and into the bloodstream. This is called external respiration.
Think of this step as quality control. All that air you breathed in arrives in these millions of tiny little sacs called alveoli. And these sacs are just wrapped in blood vessels. It's here that the real magic happens. The good stuff, the oxygen, gets transferred from the air into the blood, and the waste product, carbon dioxide, gets moved out.
But man, this quality control process is incredibly delicate. An overdose, like Mary's, means the factory isn't even getting enough raw material to work with. If Chris is at a high altitude, his lungs can actually fill with fluid, basically flooding the entire quality control floor. For someone like Brian with COPD, the machinery itself, those little alveoli, is broken. And for Roz or Shan, a blood clot or fluid from pneumonia, well, that's like a massive blockage on the assembly line, stopping the whole exchange cold.
So, we've done it. The oxygen has made it from the lungs into the blood. But now what? How does it get to the trillions of cells all over your body that are desperate for it? Well, that brings us to what I like to call the oxygen highway. This is where your circulatory system takes over, and on this massive highway system, you have these super specialized delivery trucks, your red blood cells. I mean, just look at this chart. They make up a huge chunk of your blood for a very good reason.
Each and every one is perfectly designed to grab onto oxygen molecules and carry them from the lungs to their final destination.
But this highway system can break down too. For instance, if the pump, your heart, is weak, like in Charlie's case of heart failure, the trucks just can't move. Or what if you don't have enough trucks to begin with? That's anemia, like Thondi has. Or maybe the roads themselves are blocked. That's what's happening with Margaret, where a blood clot is causing a total traffic jam, stopping delivery to a whole part of the body.
Okay, on to the final, and you could argue the most important step of all, getting that oxygen from the blood into the actual cells that need it to create energy. This is internal respiration.
This is the last mile delivery. The red blood cell has traveled the whole highway and has finally arrived at its destination. Could be a muscle cell, a brain cell, any cell in your body. Now it has to successfully hand off its precious cargo of oxygen and at the same time pick up the garbage, the carbon dioxide waste.
But here's the crazy part. Even if the delivery truck arrives perfectly on time, the final handoff can still fail. With carbon monoxide poisoning, for example, like in Bob's case, it's like there's an imposter molecule blocking the front door of the cell, so the oxygen literally can't get in. Or with someone like Andy who has hypothermia, the cell's workers are basically frozen and moving so slowly that they just can't accept the delivery.
Okay, wow, so we've seen the 4 separate processes, right? Getting air in, exchanging it in the lungs, transporting it through the blood, and finally, delivering it to the cells. So now let's connect all of this back to where we started, that feeling of being breathless.
Here's the big idea. That feeling of being out of breath, it's your body screaming that its internal balance, that precious homeostasis we talked about, is in danger. It's a compensation mechanism. Your brain detects an imbalance somewhere in that 4-step chain and it panics. It forces you to breathe faster or deeper, trying desperately to fix the problem, no matter where it is. And this is exactly why, in a hospital or an ambulance, a rapid assessment is so critical. By looking, listening, feeling, and measuring, a professional can quickly try to figure out which of those 4 processes is failing. They're trying to find the source of the problem that's making the body's alarm bell ring so furiously.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from this whole explainer. Breathlessness is not just a minor inconvenience. It's a fundamental sign that something is seriously wrong with one of your body's most vital systems. It should never, ever be ignored.
So the next time you feel that shortness of breath, doesn't matter if you're on a run or just walking up the stairs, I want you to remember this 4-part chain. Your body is sending you a message. The real question is, which part of the system is ringing the alarm, and are you listening?